Mr. City Manager, do you have any remarks?
See if this is working. Yes, it is. That's good. It's page 81. This will be, I can say this probably once. Basically, we try to hold the volunteer departments to the budget of 18-19 with some minor increases. So the request was usually higher. We lowered that based on historical analysis and went with something that was usually slightly higher than the 18-19, but not fulfilling all the requests of the department. And with that, I'll turn it over to the chief, if he has any opening statements.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. I do not have any current opening statements, so I don't think I'm on a trial yet, so. So if you've had any questions of myself, please feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to answer them. Yes?
Building and maintenance, your requested is 30,000. Can you tell me what you intend to spend that money on if you're awarded that?
The intention is to, that goes into, as it says, building repairs. We're trying to make some modifications and upgrade the building because it is getting old and outdated. So we're constantly upgrading new stuff and redoing some office spaces and such like that on top of the maintenance of the building, the plowing and the lawn mowing and type stuff like that, and the garbage removal.
I'm confused. Doesn't the city plow your lot?
Correct, but it still comes out of our operating budget to pay for that.
Interesting, I didn't know that. And the next statement that I'm going to make, I've made it before in public, so please don't take it personally.
That's okay.
I have a real hard time. East Great Plain owns that building. It is
That's
not
correct.
owned by the city, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And you own other property in that area?
We own that whole lot, if you will.
Okay. So I just have a hard time justifying in my own mind why the taxpayers are paying for a building that we don't own, that hypothetically in a year, and this doesn't apply to you, it applies to Yantic just as well, and they're going to get it too, that in 5 years you could sell that building for a profit or a loss. So I'm just a little curious. And then the other one the other one I'm okay with. Pretty much everything is good here for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other members? Alderman Nash?
I just have a couple of questions, Chief. Since Alderwoman Philbrick mentioned your building, what condition is your firehouse in?
It's better than what it was a few years back. Thanks to the budget processes over the year, we've been able to improve the building, and we're still continuing to improve it. So the building's getting better. I mean, it's still smaller than what we would like to have because, as you know, being as small as it is, we got to build fire trucks to fit into the station, which, believe it or not, this day and age is actually very tough to do. But it is happening. But overall, the building is okay.
Okay. And what kind of long-term plans, now you walked right into that for me, do you have for your site, knowing that right now we have to build special trucks for your firehouse and other items, and you are locked on that land there? There's nothing you can purchase around it to go bigger. So
no.
what are your long-term plans right there?
It's funny you should mention that. We just had a meeting the other night, and that was part of our topic of discussion with some of my other members of the department. We're not going anywhere. As much as we'd like to get a new building, and my personal opinion is if we're able to get a new building, I'd like to stay right there because we're pretty much centrally located in our district, which is a good spot, even though we do have the busiest intersection in town. But no, we're not going nowhere. And I guess, like anybody, we'd like to, expand our building and create some more space because we are limited storage space and office space as well. So that's something that we're looking long-term to do as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead,
Can we
Alderman
talk
Philbrick.
about the capital budget now also? Can you, this is a very generic because it's in everybody's budget. Can you tell me what firefighter particulate barrier hoods are?
Those are the actual hoods that all the firefighters wear that protect the exposures of the carcinogens and such like that. There's newer ones out there now. The cancer has been, the last year or 2 years has been the upping greatest thing in firefighting to prevent. So they've come out with better hoods that all firefighters wear across the country to better protect ourselves. So that, when you see that, that's what they're referring to, is the hoods that we actually
So is
wear.
it basically like a racing car driver puts under his hood?
Ver-
under his
correct,
helmet? Okay.
correct,
And
correct.
they're not disposable, you use them over and over?
Yeah, and after each use, you're supposed to wash them and such like that,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Well, you were the first, so you get to answer the question now. I don't have
That's
to.
okay.
Thank you.
Other members? Alderman Burnham?
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
I just have a couple questions on the capital budget. So, and this, again, you're the first, so you're welcome.
Okay.
So half of the fire departments were funded turnout gear, and you weren't in the capital budget. How critical is that?
Turnout gear is very critical. That's our lifeline.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You know, that's what protects us going into the fires and such. We all know that it is a costly adventure, but that's our lifeline, and that's what protects us.
So, sorry,
That's okay.
I interrupted you. Are you done?
Oh, no, that's okay. Okay, you're good.
So for the city manager, for the departments that weren't funded turnout gear this year, would there be a flip next year to fund the others? City manager? Multitasking. I'm guilty of it too. So half of the departments were not funded turnout gear.
That's correct.
So would next year, would we fund the other departments? Is that a
Yes,
scheduled thing?
and we usually alternate. yeah.
Okay. And then asbestos remediation, is there any is that a problem? Is there any exposed, you said you're doing remodeling, so is there,
One of these works, I guess.
we talked about the cancer, so let's,
Yeah. No, like I said, as we're remodeling our firehouse, we had Mystic Air Quality come in a little over a year ago and do some sampling of the stuff up in our hall upstairs. And the glue that's holding the panel on has asbestos in it, and including some of the stuff up in our popcorn ceiling also has asbestos in it.
so will it be disturbed in your remodeling?
Well, we're trying not to, but I mean, the ultimate plan is that we want to get rid of it, because ultimately we want to remodel up there as well, because it is outdated. So that's one of our ultimate plans.
So it's not mission critical at this moment? Okay.
No, it's not like it's falling apart and the
Okay.
ceiling's falling in and cracking and such like that on anybody.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other members? Alderman DeLucia?
So on the asbestos abatement, I saw that $20,000 of it is funded in the capital, but $10,000 was not. So are we phasing this over multiple years? What's the plan?
Well, my original plan was hopefully to get it all done in one shot. We had a couple of quotes, last year and it was like a little over 26,000 off the top of my head. I don't have them with me, unfortunately, I apologize. Therefore I put it in there just because, when you start a little something, opens that Pandora's box and run into a few other things. So that's kind of where we're at. I'm kind of hoping now, if the money is funded, that hopefully we'll be able to find a company that will be able to do it for that.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Browning?
Just a question, and it's also partially a legal question. Since you're running one of the two firehouses, which is owned by the fire department versus the city, let's say that you have an invitee on the premises, slip and fall, they get injured. Whose insurance covers? Is the city, or does your department have individual insurance for that?
Our department has our own insurance for that, and we pay for that out of our own pocket through our fundraisers and such.
Okay, I just didn't see, where is it in the, on page 81? Where's the insurance?
It's not in there, because the fundraisers that my fire department does, we take those funds, and that's how we pay for our insurance.
Okay, so you have a separate budget with things that cover things that are not on page 81?
I'm kind of lost on your question there.
In other words, things that are not in the general fund, there are other things that you pay for in your special.
Oh, you're correct, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Alderwoman Gould?
Good evening, Chief Milton. Thank you for
Good
being here tonight.
Thank you.
Have all of the fire marshal inspection issues been addressed and remediated?
They have been addressed. The biggest one is still our second means of egress, the staircase. We're having some little issues back and forth with the building official and the contractor, which I'm slowly working on, and I'm getting there. It's just taking a little bit longer than I was hoping it was going to.
And my second question is, does the city manager's proposed budget for your department adequately meet your needs for
Yes, it does.
2019 and 20?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Alderman Filbert.
And again, Chief Milty, if I may use the Milty as a rather personal term.
Certainly.
Because you're the first, utilities, maybe this is a question for Josh. Utilities for your building, water, sewer, electric, gas, oil, all of, none of, internet connections? Can you tell me what's included in the utility line item?
You're welcome.
Sure. Utilities includes water, gas, sewer, and electric.
Water, gas, sewer, and electric.
Yes, and the communications line item has all of those.
Oh, we're all
Telephones,
We're all
wireless.
familiar, I'm very familiar
Yep.
with the communications. So here's my question. I could call up NPU and I could get a year's worth of utility bills for each individual firehouse.
Yeah,
Okay, so these are on target, these are not. I know myself, I'm on a budget because I can't afford to pay my utility bill each month. So I would hope that the NPU gives a special rate to the municipalities.
well, these are estimates. We don't know for certain what the usage is going to be during the year. It's not, they don't give us a flat fee for utilities for the year because, they're purchase gas adjustments and purchase electric adjustments, plus, a warmer winter versus a colder winter. The East Great Plain is just as susceptible to any other ratepayer as far as those changes are concerned.
All right, thank you. And again, because you're the first, you get the brunt of the generic questions. Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Thank you very much. Hope that wasn't too painful. Next is Laurel Hill.
That's page 83. I have it. This budget is similar in format to AGP. I have no further comments at this point.
Chief, anything you'd like to share?
No, I have no comments. I'll happily answer whatever questions you guys have.
Members? Alderman Filbert.
I'll go to the Capitol because I don't have too many. Oh, physicals. Are all of your members, and this is a generic question, but I'm trying to divvy them up between the chiefs because we just sort of lambasted Chief Milton because he was first. Required physicals yearly?
Yes.
And who does the physicals? Are they coordinated through the city so that you all use the same medical facility? You all go to Dr. Smith?
I believe we're all using Donna Savardi.
Oh, I have no, I'm
Okay.
just curious that you all use the same,
That's my understanding. I know we do, and I
Provider,
believe
thank
everyone else does as well.
okay. I want to go to the Capitol and $26,000 for an exhaust system. Is that for your vehicle bays?
That is
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Pro Tem Nash.
I have the same question. With the condition of your house, physical condition of your house,
It's better than it was 6 months ago when I had the leak. We've had to incur quite a few costs this year. That was not planned. $2,200 to replace a pad to attempt to stop a leak that was coming into the station. So we think we've figured that out. Everything else seems like it's okay at this point.
and long-term plans, because I know, again, you're landlocked there and you're, restricted on how you can get your trucks in and out, things like that. So what's the long-term plan for you there?
Well, we are landlocked. There is no room to really expand out sideways. We actually have had meetings going up, figuring out other solutions, garages on the far end of the property. None of those are really panning out right now, and they're all kind of cost prohibited at this point. They were talked about at our budget meeting with the city manager and Josh, but nothing at this point is concrete. But we are looking at trying to expand. We are running out of room quickly.
Thank you.
Other members, questions? Alderman DeLucia.
To go back to your exhaust system in the funded capital budget, Chief, where did the cost come from? Is that an approved bid or?
So what happened was when we had the water leak, I had companies come in trying to figure out a solution for preventing a further mold problem that we had. And part of that was getting an exhaust system down there. So I had 3 companies come in, we got 3 quotes, and that's the cost of one of the quotes.
So I was under the impression that this was the exhaust system that flexed pipe connects to the truck so that the diesel exhaust doesn't accumulate in the house.
Getting back to Alderman Nash's question, we are running out of room. Those systems do not work in my firehouse. So we had to go with option B. There is another system out there that mounts to the ceiling. It recognizes when a vehicle starts up and instantly starts the process of removing the exhaust from the station.
And then as a secondary purpose, it'll also help remediate air changes.
It's a 4-stage process. The 4th stage burdens off all bacteria, mold, and everything else, and then kind of recirculates the air with fresh air from outside. So we're getting a 2-for-1 kind of deal.
Thank you.
Other questions? Alderwoman Philbrick.
I'm glad you asked that question, Mr. DeLucia, because I was under the impression, and with your answer, you didn't give me all the information. You only gave me the answer to the question that I asked. It would have been helpful. Is option B more expensive than a conventional exhaust system that some other house would use where they hook the pipe up to the exhaust pipe?
It's actually cheaper than
It's cheaper.
a other system that has pipes, because we're not running the pipes throughout the station, which would cost extra.
Okay.
We are running, it's a box that's mounted on the ceiling. There'll be 1 in each bay. And there's no pipe except for 1 pipe that goes out. So we don't have to run the additional 4 or 5 pipes.
And it acts like a dehumidifier too, so.
Correct.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Yes, Alderwoman Gould.
Good evening, Chief Westervelt. Thank you for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
Your department has 17 members that are CERT trained. Could you explain to the rest of the council what that means for our community?
So actually, right now we have 11 CERT members. We did host a training at my department. We put other people through. That totals the 17. I actually went through it myself because I've never done it myself, so I wanted to see what it was. So we put a total of 17 people through it. All of my fire police also went through it, so we can use them. The training, basically what CERT is an additional portion of people that we could use in times of emergency. So if we start running out of resources in the city, we can call and get more people. There have been times where we've needed more people to do flood activities. We run out of firefighters because they're all pumping basements. We don't have anyone to go put sandbags up. That's what they're for. So it's just an additional group of people that we can rely on in times of emergency, that go above and beyond, firefighters responding to calls.
And does the city manager's proposed budget adequately meet the needs of your department?
Yes, without any unforeseen problems, yes.
Barring any unforeseen problems, yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I guess we're all set, Chief. Thank you so much.
Very well.
Occam is next. Just as a means of introduction, this is Chief Carol Spaulding, who's the new chief of Occam, for members who may not have had a chance to meet.
Yes, this budget actually has the largest increase over the budgeted items. The chief, obviously, being new, had some new requests that weren't in the previous budget. That's why the request proposed is substantially different. But again, we try to rely on historical numbers to come up with a relatively reasonable estimate of the expenses for fiscal 1920.
Alderwoman Philbrick, please.
So Chief, because you're, I assume this is your first budget season, and the city manager has alluded to additional costs. Would it be fair to say that these increases are due to perhaps, for lack of a better word, insufficient budgeting in the past?
That is one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons. We have some things in the fire department that we need to address, such as lighting and other things. That is part of the cost. We have the old lighting that's in the interior upstairs that has been there since 1969. And it's the old fluorescent type, and it's getting hard to find the bulbs for them.
So that's why you're building, would that be into your building and repair and maintenance? Because that's a $10,000 increase that you're asking for. And why is your communications line item so high?
One of the reasons, like I said, I'm new to this budget. This budget was submitted by another chief, so I'm not at present time up on speed on it.
Oh, so this is not your budget?
No, this is
Okay, then I will
presented
leave you
for-
alone.
So,
Any other members? Alderman DeLucia.
You know, in all fairness, aside from the piece of information we just received, I see that the budget request was significantly higher, but the proposed is pretty much in line with the historical data on the communications line item in Occam's budget. This is more of a comment than a question, Chief, but I see that the projected call volume for this year shows a sharp increase. Are you, and this is not a loaded question, are you experiencing higher call volume?
yes, since I've taken over, the call volume has increased probably 10%. And for lack of a better word, I think it's because of management and being in agreement with all the other departments.
So, I just have one more. And on the lighting issue that you just raised, is it your intention to work with the utility to upgrade lighting and ultimately move to more efficient lighting in the house?
That would be correct.
And I understand that you inherited most of this budget, so is that an initiative that has already started to move forward, so these numbers are based on the idea that some money will need to be spent to upgrade lighting and other utility-related issues in the house?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Other members, Alderman Gould?
Good evening, Chief. Thank you for being here, and congratulations on your new position. How many members does your department presently have at this time?
We have 30 members,
And how many of those members are new?
2.
Okay. And, my question of the night. Is the city manager's proposed budget for your department, will that adequately meet your needs for the next year?
I believe I can work with it.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Filbert?
I need to go back to your statement that you, as I understood you to say it correctly, that your call volume has increased by approximately 10% due to, I want you to fill in the blanks, please.
The past chief wasn't forthcoming with the other departments. For lack of a better word, didn't get along with them. I've been to several meetings with the other chiefs and with outlying departments, and they put us back on their run cards. So we do mutual aid outside the city also.
That's a conversation that I'll have to have with several people at a later date. That's disturbing to me on many, many levels. So basically, you're playing in the playground, in the schoolyard more now that we have a new chief than before. You're invited to the party more often than you used to be.
Correct.
Interesting. Not acceptable, but interesting.
Other members? Alderman Sam Browning, please.
I don't have the questions, just comment. Thank you for your honesty on the last point.
Absolutely.
Are there further questions? Thank you very much, Chief. And again, welcome. Taftville Fire, please.
Page 87. Same theme in this budget. We tried to look at the historical numbers, projected numbers, and there is a slight increase in some of the line items within the 1920 budget.
Questions of members? Pro Tem Nash?
Chief, I know you just had the addition put on your house finally, and I walked through it, and they did a very nice job, and I know you're still working with the punch list over there with that. So with that being asked, how is the condition of your house as of right now?
Over the last 10 years, we made it a priority to upgrade the station as best as we could, which included electrical upgrades, lighting upgrades to make it more energy efficient, things of that nature, to bring it more or less, make it more energy efficient across the board. There's still a couple of odd projects out there. The windows are still original from 1969. We just haven't found anybody that can replace them cheap enough. But eventually, that's probably the last thing to get tackled.
Thank you, Chief.
Members, other questions? Alderman DeLucia?
Pro Tem Nash just mentioned the punch list that's on the, kind of left hanging out there still from the addition, but could you be specific about where the completion of the addition is currently?
It's minor things like ice cleats over the gutters so that with the metal roof, the things doesn't go in. It's all very, very minor things like that. It's nothing of major importance. We've worked with the finance office to get the heat included in the apparatus base law out of some leftover money we had from capital projects over the last year or so. But we're actually looking fairly well.
So the project is 98%
99.8%
complete?
done,
Okay,
yeah.
great, good. I have a question about the capital requests that are in the not funded list, only because, as you well know, member of public safety, I want to keep my eye on the things that are looming on our horizon, or could be looming on our horizon.
Sure.
So, so I'm looking at page 118. The parking lot expansion, the amount caught my attention, because obviously that's something we're really going to have to plan for if that's, you know.
Well, part of the problem is, and the number's a little high. The number's a little high simply because we don't know what's under the ground there. You know, there's really nobody left alive when they built the building, and those that are there, they really don't remember. We do know there's a brook, believe it or not, there's a brook and there's a drain pipe that runs directly underneath our firehouse. But as far as ledge or anything else like that, as far as getting the drainage in, are they gonna have to break away the ledge? Are they gonna have to do anything along that nature? That all costs extra money. I'd like to think it was all soft ground and be done and out fairly cheap a lot, but if they've got to chip away ledge to put drainage in or something like that, that's what it costs us.
So this isn't a quote, this is more of an estimate.
That was based off of 2 commercial estimates I got. The guy, one of the gentlemen was very frank and said, I can tell you it costs $100,000 and we could have $500,000 worth of overruns depending on the ledge, the way the ledge pitches goes towards the back of the building. There might be some up front, things along that line.
And then, and thank you for that. The other item is just a few lines down, the exhaust system extension in the addition for the dive truck.
Yes.
The amount of that, and I know we didn't fund, it's not in the funded list, but the amount of that caught my attention only because I think last year we did a firehouse that was multiple bays, 5 or 6 bays, that was $39,000, and this was $32,000. And again, I know it's not funded, but if this is something that we need to think about, I'm wondering how that's coming together.
So again, that was the cost to put a separate standalone system in the 2 bays that are there. Because the gentleman that came out to give us the price quote, he was not sure if, because of the distances to the back of the building, if the blower system and filters would work the same way. So I think personally, they can do it, but, you know, he's the expert. They measured how many cubic feet of air it moves per minute, things along that nature. That was his recommendation. He's flat out said we can do it, but it might not handle it as well. But that was for a standalone system with another blower, and all the hoses and tracks.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Other members? Alderman Burnham?
This is a question for the city manager, and just as Alderman DeLucia was saying about planning, do we have a formal capital improvement plan?
Yes,
Is it like a 5-year rolling capital improvement plan?
yes.
Where is it?
We only show 1 year at a time, but we have projected numbers out for each project in our 5-year plan. It's not in the budget because when we're dealing with the budget, we're only dealing with next year. The planning CIP is a separate document.
Right. Right, no, I understand that. Just in other towns I've seen, it's public, and then it's something for the city council to be able to work from as we make decisions. So if we see something coming up this year, and we can see something coming up the next 2 years, so it better helps to plan and prioritize if we know you, as management, have an idea of the prioritization, because we're seeing all this for the first time, from, I don't know, this is my second budget season. I'm seeing all this for the first time, so I don't know how things get elevated to be funded year by year, if they've been on a list for 5 years or 3 years or 2 years, and I understand things happen and priorities shift and change, but I think that would be helpful information for us to be able to see the capital improvement plan.
Yes, Alderman Filbert?
I couldn't agree with Alderwoman Burnham more. I wasn't aware that we had a 5-year capital plan, and I think it's long past due that the city council be given access to that. It's how can we make decisions if we don't have all the information. If I knew that something was in the pipeline for 3 years from now, then I might have an entirely different approach to what I'm voting for tonight or talking about tonight. So I would like to see the 5-year capital plan. And I would assume that it's a rolling document, that it changes every year. Chief Jenks, can you tell me your addition, did it come in on budget?
No, ma'am, we were granted $250,000 through a state grant, and by the time it got put out to bid, we had significant price increases, so it cost the city of Norwich about $93,000.
How much?
$93,000.
So an additional 93 over the 250. But then you're done, you're
Done.
okay. And your building repairs and maintenance is not a large number, right? I'm just, because you've done a lot, I was just curious what that involved.
That's the continual maintenance of the building, the HVAC system, the systems inside the building, things along that nature. A couple of years ago, 2015, we had the main HVAC system for the meeting room, because it's 2 zones, 1 up, 1 down. That actually died on us in the middle of summer. So we worked with the finance department to be able to take care of that. Couldn't have the unit repaired, so we had to have it replaced. A lot of things, preventative maintenance goes a long way in keeping some of the older systems still running. So we don't have to spend a large amount of money to replace them.
Thank you.
Yes, Alderman Pro Tem
Chief,
Nash.
for those that do not sit on the public safety, can you explain the parking addition?
The Tappan Fire Department currently has 38 members. We've lost a couple due to career changes and moving out of state. With the revitalization of Taffville, between the pharmacy and the businesses across the street, what's coming in, we've only got about 9 parking spots. So it's not uncommon for us to have a medical call to have 10, 12, 14 people come to the call. But what the problem is they're parking on the street. They're taking up valuable prime real estate for this gentleman's customers to come in. It's always been a bone of contention over the years between the different agencies that have been there. But that's where the parking lot, the request for the bigger parking lots come in. We also had one of our members, his truck was legally parked on the side of the road. It was sideswiped by a drunk driver who fled the scene. And that was some problems for our people. And again, as Taffville is being revitalized, we still have a certain population that, I'd say, you want to call them nefarious characters. So sometimes if you don't lock up your truck, you come out and find your change or whatever else missing. So if they park across the street, they're not on our property, they're not covered by our camera system.
Now, where is this proposed parking going to be?
Actually, the proposed parking lot, the easiest spot would be, Taffville is lucky enough, I guess you could say, to be the only one, the only playground other than the main rec field to have 2 basketball courts. Lou DePina converted the old tennis court to a basketball court. It's fallen in disrepair, there's some large cracks in it. I know the rec department would like to keep it. They do get a lot of use, the courts do, the whole playground up there does. But that would be the logical place to go. We have nowhere else to go. We don't want to take away from the park in the back or anything along that line.
Thank you, Chief.
Other questions? Alderwoman Gould?
Good evening, Chief Jenks. Thanks for being here tonight. How often is the dive team utilized within the city?
Luckily, very few. We're on most run cards for the city, within the city limits. We do respond outward as a Regional 4 asset. We're making a shift over the next 2 years to take some of the funding that the city provides and shifting it towards a regional grant so that the city that'll be lowered off of our equipment maintenance and stuff like that. It's kind of hard to say. Some years we have nothing, and some years you have you can have a number of them. We've been very fortunate in the city of Norwich not to have a drowning in a few years, all the way around. So the hard numbers is kind of hard to come up with. It's not like, it's a motor vehicle accident every day or, a reported fire or something along them lines. The water rescue stuff is a low frequency, extremely high risk event. So So the fewer than we have, honestly, we're better for our residents.
And how often are you called for mutual aid for the dive team?
We are, being a regional asset, we also serve the police departments, so we have done evidence recovery for the police departments in New London County, Stonington, Ledyard, Norwich. So it all depends on what they have for a case going on. And as far as the emergencies, last Memorial Day, while everybody was having picnics, we were committed to Long Island Sound with looking for the 2 missing kayakers. We've been out probably 4 or 5 times over the year to different towns in the area.
My next question is, have all of the fire marshal inspection issues been addressed and remediated?
No, ma'am.
Could you elaborate?
We have to install an Ansel system within the building. Our kitchen was built in 1969. It's a fire suppression system over the hood. There's been some changes over the years. They now have to have a fresh air intake and things along that line. The last couple of years, we put it in the budget. There were other people that had a lot higher priority. They had a lot more money. We discussed it with the city manager and the finance department. Said, you know, we can get by with ours, but the abatement still has to be addressed.
Okay, and my final question. Does the city manager's proposed budget adequately meet your department needs?
We will try our hardest to work within the confines that we've been allotted.
Thank you.
Alderman Browning.
There's a proposal for a Lucas device, which I understand does artificial respiration. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
And my understanding is the city of Norwich does not own one, but American Ambulance does. Is that accurate?
They do not own a Lucas.
Okay, so neither American Ambulance or the city of Norwich owns one?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm just curious why we would choose to, because we do have a pattern where once one department obtains this device, everyone else wants parity. I'm just curious why Taftville, we should spend the money.
We have several elderly complexes in town. And, you know, if you've never done CPR in a moving vehicle, American does have a similar device called the ROSQ for extricating out of the mill homes that we have. It doesn't work very well. It's about providing the best patient care and making the patient have the best possibility of survival. That's what it boils down to. I cannot speak for any other department. That's not us. I know that with the number of cardiac arrest calls that we have in Taftville between the elderly, the over 55 complex, the elderly home, things along that nature, it would definitely make things a lot easier.
Yeah. I mean, I know that there's elderly housing in other places in the city of Norwich, especially, so I could see that if we're doing this, we will have future requests from other departments.
Again, I can't speak for them. I just know that when it comes to providing the best level of patient care that we can, if anybody's ever done CPR, you'll realize that you cannot carry on that pace for that long. You're looking at about 100 compressions a minute, and it just can't be done no matter how physically fit you are. So this is a device, it's a mechanical device that will be able to provide that, to help that patient.
Other members? Yes, Alderman Brenham.
Hi, thank you. So what is your hesitancy when you say that you'll try your best to work within it? There's big discrepancies of the request and what's proposed for building repairs and maintenance and equipment and furniture maintenance. Is that your hesitancy with this budget?
There is a certain amount of equipment that has annual maintenance that has to be done that's required. We don't want to skip on any of that. If we can juggle things around, we'll see what we can do. You know, maybe we won't have something, the ice rescue suits pressure tested this year. Will they still work the same way? Yes, but we'll find out that they're leaking after the gentleman have been in them. In a bad environment. Building and grounds, it's just, we're just trying to muddle through everything. There are other programs that we provide through them, accounts for, the equipment and furniture maintenance and stuff like that, to the community. and, you know, them are the type of programs that might not be funded.
What type of community programs through equipment and furniture?
We have had smoke detectors in the past that were available, so that if somebody, you go to an elderly housing, go to a home, somebody doesn't have one, theirs is outdated, or they had a problem, you know, we can install one for them, and things along that lines. If, you know, stuff like that isn't funded, we just can't provide that service anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Chief, just for your own knowledge, I did meet with the director last month. She's aware of your parking concerns
Yeah.
and the potential of that impact on one court.
You know, we had talked to 2 engineers, and the price was, I believe the cheapest price we got was about $11,000 for them to design a parking lot, so that you would actually know how much square footage it was going to require, things of that nature. But $11,000 is a lot of money. I didn't have it in this year's budget. I don't have it in next year's budget or even the request, just to find out what the project could cost. To me, that's a lot of money to lay out there. So I chose to work with a couple of, you know, general contractors that do that, but there is no engineered, I mean, I'll be honest, there's no engineered plan or anything else that would have to be included in that. I was kind of shocked, because I didn't pay that much for the addition, or for the architect of the addition, or the engineered drawings, but it was $11,000 for the design parking lot.
If you look into capital not funded, you'll see 2 quotes for each of the courts that the rec department recommended, and that was $48,000 for resurfacing of each, just for sharing further information with you.
Yes, we did see that.
Yep.
That's the resurface.
Yes.
To change the parking lot, would have to change the grade, install drainage, so that
Right.
we're not draining back into the field and turning that into a mud pit or anything like that, or eroding the walking track that goes around.
True. Further questions? Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you for your time.
Yes. Could take a 5-minute recess. Go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Get 10.
Go slow. Yes. No, we don't pull our toes back. Thank you, but. It's not as bad as. You feel it. It's hard as a rock.
Yes, ma'am.
It's like a Charlie horse in your thigh. Sure, I think I can put it down.
You put it down. And if it gets bad, don't put it down. Go back up. Mike has a first aid kit. It touched your leg.
See, yeah, right there. won't break. I tried. Physical therapy is done everything. Listen, the last time I just cut it. Yeah, no, I broke it. Femur, a femur.
Okay?
All right.
What do you think? You sure you don't want to stand up a little bit?
Hold on, I'll wait.
Get the camera.
I'm not walking anywhere.
No, I'm not asking you to walk. Just stand up. Still ripping it? Did I get any Advil or anything?
I can't take any NSAIDs because I'm gonna leave.
Okay, so what about Tylenol?
Yeah, I take Tylenol.
Anybody have any Tylenol?
I have Advil downstairs.
No, no Advil.
No Advil.
You can't have Advil.
No NSAIDs. Would you mind otherwise? Sorry, guys, it's just. See, it's cheaper to do it here, otherwise I have to call the ambulance. All right, let's see.
Oh. Then you better put your foot down, sit forward in the chair, and letting the foot down. Because if you're sitting too far back, you're
And where all the tension is on here. Like, I don't have any shirt on. No. If there is something.
I don't know.
Give me the nod.
Yes.
Let me take the Tylenol and I'll be good. Billy's got something better. All right, thank you.
There it is, that's what.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, for the feet.
It's just enough.
We all set?
Are we all set?
Thank you.
We're all set, boss.
Okay, Johnny.
It's from my surgery plan, my IT band, just is like.
Next is Yannick. We're joined by Chief Blanchard. John, do you have any remarks?
This budget, we did trim substantially to try to conform with previous historical numbers. There was a few projects in this budget that is why it's reduced. We delayed some of the building maintenance items to another year, but I'm sure the chief will give you details on that. That's it.
Okay. Chief, any comments?
I'll take any questions on the operational capital
Okay.
budget.
Members? Alderman Philbrick?
I have several questions, Chief. I'll start with, why are your dues licenses and subscriptions so much higher than any other department? You're
I have
hitting $7,000 here.
No, actually, it's $2,000 is what we're going to be funded with. And historically speaking, my requests are provided to finance in a form of a spreadsheet. They're broken down granular, as the associations we belong to, the subscriptions that we take every year, and the money that we're allotted through the budget process is what we subscribe to. So our request is X, it's funded at this level, and then we take those subscriptions in a priority for like several different organizations, such as the National Volunteer Fire Council, NFPA, Fire Chiefs Association, stuff like that. We fund all those with the money we're given.
Okay, if I could may continue, and I asked this question of Chief Milty also because your two departments are in a unique situation in that you personally, not you personally, but Yantic Volunteer Fire owns their own building.
Correct.
And you recently purchased a piece of land next door.
Correct.
May I ask how much you paid for that piece of land?
$50,000.
$50,000.
Correct.
And what is your intention to use that land for?
Right now, it is going to be open space, and we may have some overflow gravel parking there, maybe within the next year or two. But right now, we just acquired the property as it's the piece next door. It was owned by a business up in the town of Canterbury. He approached us, we did not approach him, and we were able to purchase the property.
Okay, because my problem, as I said, and I said the same thing to Chief Milty, is that I have, and always have, had a problem wrapping my head around why the taxpayers of the city of Norwich invest in building improvements to buildings that are owned by private entities, be they nonprofits or else. And the rationale that has always been given to me is that because you have to have someplace to house the fire trucks so that they stay in good condition. Which I understand, but all the other things that go along with it.
That's a generic response, and it's very much on point, because the service that we provide requires us to do more than house the apparatus. We have a lot of equipment, records and storage, and we need facilities to train. So simple things, restrooms, kitchens, stuff like that, are all part of the facility. It's not just simply housing the apparatus. And our facility, being one of the older facilities in the city, it takes a lot to keep that facility in the condition it's in. You know, from putting a new roof on the facility about 10 years ago, and, you know, prevention with wood-boring insects and bugs and stuff like that. A lot of things go on in that facility, and you may see a portion of it here in the city side, but there's a fire side also to this that you don't see as a council member, that the members take care of a substantial amount of upkeep on that property and repair. The fire company itself, as you just saw, purchased the property, but we invest in, you know, keeping the property up to date. Memorial courtyards for the membership, certain landscaping aspects, different functions around the facility and in our 5-acre field. Those are all funded by the fire company, not by the city. So we contribute. I don't have it, I could tell you tonight. I mean, I could give you some kind of a breakdown, but
No, that's a very good explanation.
we do contribute a significant amount of our own money to keep the station at the level it's at now, as well as the assistance from the council.
Alderwoman Gould.
Good evening, Chief Blanchard. Thank you for being here. There is a rumor going around that I would like you to address, that the new fire truck that you have purchased will not fit in your station. True or not true?
That rumor is false. The truck will fit in our station. The truck that we have specified in the purchase order that's been cut from the city, and the plans we provided and what we're looking for overall length, height, width, etc., is very similar to the truck that is right next door to it, engine 33. We're replacing engine 31. Engine 33 is basically the model we used as a template to design the new truck. We changed some compartmentation and little layout change here and there, but the new truck is, and I took the figures tonight before the meeting, 6 inches longer. And I could bring anyone to the station if they like to come down, and they could see the apparatus that's there, engine 33. They could look at all the space around the truck, all the height that's over it, and the new truck's gonna sit right next to it, and there's more than enough room for the new truck to fit.
Okay, thank you. I know that I believe that you're working on a grant with the state. Did that get nixed today?
I have not heard. There was a bond commission hearing at 10:30 this morning, and I have not heard if that has been cut. So I can't tell you if it has or hasn't.
Okay, but could you tell the rest of the council what you're working on?
We requested through Senator Ostin $800,000 to approximately 2 years ago to put 2 additional bays onto our annex building. We've requested the expansion of that annex building for the past 9 years in our capital budget. We see the need for the additional space and storage. Presently in Yantic, we house a Connex box, which is a C box. It's 40 foot long, and we keep several pieces of equipment, some additional hose. Our boat is stored in the Connex box. Outside, we keep a 18-foot enclosed Wells cargo trailer that we keep some of our technical rescue equipment in, and so on and so forth. Not the best application to store the boat in the Connex building. It's subject to high humidity in the summer, freezing temperatures in the winter. The trailer sits outside exposed to the elements all the time. Used a couple times a year. We've actually changed the tires before they were worn out for dry rot versus wear. So we're looking to put 2 additional bays on. The primary reason for us requesting those 2 additional bays is we would like to put all of our motor-driven apparatus, our engines, in those bays where we can install the vehicle exhaust system. The primary reason is the health and safety of the firefighters. Our main station has 3 bays. Only 1 bay has the ability to take a Plimo vent or a vehicle exhaust system that's rail mounted like you see in all the other stations. The main station, the bays are too narrow for that to function properly. So we would like to put the boat or the trailer or both in the main station and move the engines out to this annex building addition where we can eliminate the diesel exhaust fumes that migrate through the entire station every time you start these vehicles. And they're started on a daily basis. And as you know, it's not in the best interest of anyone to be breathing that in. We have exhaust fans. We have measures in place that we've done for years. But the best solution is to put in a vehicle exhaust system. And we want to do that as part of this building expansion on the other side. If we were able to put the 2 bays on, if the funding comes through, it would be essential that we acquire that piece of property like we did, because the variance would not be required. We'd be able to build over the property line. Not that I have a map to show you, but by adding on to that building, these 2 bays would put us right there. So now that we own that piece of real estate, the variance goes away.
My next question, where is your department on the fire marshal inspection issues?
So the fire marshal abatement that was taking place, our station, I think, had the largest, I don't want to say number of violations, but the largest dollar amount required to remediate the issues that were noted. We started initially with a request of $170,000, which you funded. That money was used to design the solution that we needed to repair these issues. Went out to competitive bid through the finance office, through Mr. Hathaway. We received several competitive bids, the lowest one being approximately $347,000. Not having the money to do the entire project, I worked with the city manager and finance, and we were able to phase the project to get it going and look at the most serious issues. So we were able to we call it phase 1. We're putting $180,000 towards phase 1 which we've acquired through the capital budget process. And that's going to start, actually, we have a kickoff meeting on this Friday with the construction company to get the ball rolling on that phase. So we're still underfunded on that. We still need funding to complete the project. Essentially, we are looking at my request for $215,000 to complete that. So, and that has a 3% increase. Figure by the time funding goes through, things are approved, the contractor has indicated to us that if it's not a seamless transition, there will be approximately a $3,000, demobilization, remobilization cost that he made clear to the purchasing agent that the city could incur. So we factored that into that number, as well as the design fees that were spent on the project. So we're underfunded at this point at $215,000.
Okay. And my final question. Does the city manager's proposed budget for your department adequately meet your department's needs?
Well, our budget is funded at the level it's funded. Historically, as finance has done, they've kept us pretty consistent with this dollar amount. We request additional funding all the time, above and beyond, what we obviously get. There are things we would like to do, training sessions we would like to have, outside agencies come in and do some specialized stuff with us. So we have numbers in there that, things we'd like to do, some changes and repairs we would like to make to the station. At this point, we have to work within what's provided. The $165,000 that's proposed, we'll work within that and we'll make it happen. We get into a position every year, and I bring it up at every public safety meeting, that we have unexpected expenses throughout the year. Our line of work sometimes doesn't go smooth. Things get broken. The things that break are very expensive. I have a piece of apparatus that's out of service right now that we're looking at. I hate to say it, I'm going to use several $1,000s to get back on the road. We've had failures in the past of equipment that were $3,000 or $4,000 to repair or replace. These things happen, and we work with finance, we work with the city manager to get funding or reappropriate funding within our budget. So we have 165 proposed. I hope you fund it at that level. I'd like to see a little more, but, we will do our job at the $165,000 if that's what you feel you can afford.
Thank you.
Other members? Pro Tem Nash.
You answered most of my questions, the condition of your house, the HVAC system, your long-term plans. I just have a couple of questions. The conversion to gas, has that been, I know that you've mentioned that in the past, has that occurred or not occurred yet?
So I found out recently that Public Utilities is planning on installing gas down into the village, which is fantastic. If you look at my capital requests for the past couple of years, I've had in there the replacement of the underground oil tank we have. It hit 30 years old. It's required by DEEP to come out and be put above ground. As you know, the station's in a floodplain, and to design that solution is what I was looking to do. I was looking to get funding, to get someone in to figure out where we can put it, anchor it, do it appropriately, because it's not as simple as your home where your tank is in your basement. So we consume a lot of fuel. It's a big building, it's old, and we wanted to get that done. Now, with the news of MPU coming down with the gas main, I would like to look at the option of converting the station over to natural gas. I think that would be in the best interest of the city, find out what that cost would be. We have not started that process yet. It's something the Building and Housing Committee is going to look into, so I can better have a discussion when the time is appropriate about that. We will, at a minimum right now, through the Phase 1 project of the fire marshal abatement, will require some work on the exterior of the building to the rear, which would be the logical choice to install the gas line into the building, right into the boiler room. we will make sure that at least the piping during this phase gets put in somehow, so that when that time comes, we don't have to remove all the work that we just did and put it all back in. So basically, it sounds like we'll be putting some plastic pipe in the ground to facilitate a future gas conversion, if that's what we can do. So we'll see how it goes as the time goes on.
Okay. My last question is, if you're fortunate enough to get the 800,000 from the bond thing to put these additions on, being that you're in a flood zone, what is the cost of mitigating, I got stuck there for a minute, on the flood zone? Because I know building a building, you're gonna have to have the compensatory ditch, you're gonna have to have able to, for the water to flood through. So is that available where you're at now with these two new bays?
So preliminary discussions with civil engineering firms and architects that we've had on this project. We own several acres down there, so we have the ability to provide what they need. There's a process we have to go through for planning, as you all know, to get the permits to facilitate this, and we expect it to take 16 to 20 months to be accomplished. And there will be some specific requirements to the building for elevation, so on and so forth, because of the flooding concern.
Thank you, Chief.
Other questions? Alderman Philbrick?
I'd like to preface my statements by saying, and I hope you'll take this in the spirit that it's intended, I don't like finding out things on the street. The House Bill 123 for $800,000. Why is it that the council is now only finding out about this, and it's been in the works? We have public safety meetings every month. It never occurred to you to mention it to any of us?
Well, it wasn't a topic for you at that point. The city manager was advised of our application at the time, and as we've done historically in the past with our grant requests, we simply notify finance or the city manager that, we're doing X. When we got to a point that we needed support, so on and so forth, I would definitely come to the council, public safety first, to ask for it. This has been in the works for, a couple of years now, and it's finally getting some feet. I don't know where it's gonna go, or I don't know if it's been cut at 10:30, but when it is appropriate, I definitely would have came to you for, information and support.
Well, my personal opinion is that I am a true believer in transparency and communication, and I'm very disappointed in the manner that I found out about this. $800,000 is a hell of a lot of money.
It is?
If you add bays to your station, I'm sure you're familiar with the statement, it's not the initial cost, it's the upkeep. So something that costs $800,000 to construct will cost tens of thousands of dollars to maintain. You're talking about, Alderwoman Gould asked you about your truck. What I'm getting from this is you need new bays to house your trucks. I've been driving for 60 years. I've never had a garage. I've had many new cars in my life. They've always been outside. So I have a hard time, Frank. I really do. I'm very disappointed and, quite frankly, a little annoyed. So my last question is, what are you going to do if you don't get the grant? What is your backup plan?
Business as usual. The trailer will stay outside, the boat will stay in the Connex building.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I apologize for not informing you, I really do. It is not our intent, and it's not tied. This request for $800,000 is not tied to this new piece of apparatus. So I'd like to put that on the record right now, that they are not one and the same.
It's just timing, the timing is,
Timing's everything, and there are tons of conspiracy theorists in our city that, kind of whip these things up sometimes, and I apologize if that's what you thought. But our request has been in for a couple of years with legislation, and if you look at my capital request, historically, this started 9 years ago. So it's not something new.
okay, thank you.
Yes, Alderman Browning.
Here's what I don't understand. Let's forget about the fact that the city of Norwich owns a fireboat. Let's assume that it's sitting in Norwich Harbor and it's difficult to transport, just for the sake of argument. Taffville has a dive team, has a boat, it's undercover. Why does Yantic need a need a boat, which is now driving the price for an additional building or part of a building to provide shelter to it?
We are not providing a building for the fire boat. We would simply put it into the main station. The main purpose of the two-bay expansion is for the health and safety of the firefighters, to get the vehicle exhaust system in to better that environment for them. The benefit, one of the benefits, one of many benefits, is the boat will be inside, but we're not building a two-bay addition for this fireboat. This fireboat is not anywhere near what the city of Norwich has. That's a superior piece of equipment. Ours is a little 16-foot Boston Whaler on a trailer with a 60-horse outboard on the back, I think. It's very small. It's needed by us primarily for the river and the flooding events that have occurred in the past. The boat is approximately 28 years old, I believe, but has been used several times. We, along with the Taffville Department, it is Dive 23, Yantic and Taffville, started that dive team. Chief Jenks is the chief of the team, and our members work together to make sure that the departments respond accordingly to incidents. That boat is part of that response when needed and as called. So we're not looking to replace the boat or anything like that, but we're looking to basically house it properly.
But it's, granted, it takes up space in a bay, and, I mean, I don't think there's any dispute that if you call Chief Jenks and asked for use of his boat, he'd be over there as fast as humanly possible.
I don't doubt it. Occam has an inflatable boat. I could call them. I could call probably 4 or 5 other agencies and get a boat if I needed it, absolutely. But again, historically speaking, we've used the boat on Yannick Flats, where the Yannick River Inn is, down by FMI, in the river, in our own field, as a matter of fact. When the river floods, you're a resident of Norwich, you know historically what can happen. And those boats were working in conjunction with us. I want to say the 82 flood. I think there were several boats down along Warwick Street, Sturtevant Street, taking people and their belongings out of their homes. So, you know, that happens on occasion. Does it happen every year? No. But when it does, you know, we have a piece of equipment that, you know, can facilitate that. That boat was, you know, one of the first boats here in the volunteer houses. East Great Plains had a boat, we had a boat, and then I think some of the other departments acquired them along the way.
We have more boats than we know what to do with. Okay.
The boat really costs you minimal to upkeep. Fleet does a great job every year taking care of it. It's not a huge expense for maintenance. It's paid off. It's been in the city for almost 28 years.
Well, I'm not going to keep you up here because we have other people. I'm just of the opinion that that space which that boat will be fitted into, I'm just thinking that maybe that space could be used better.
It's limited restriction. It's in very narrow bay. I don't want to put motorized apparatus in there because they cannot install a Flymo vent or vehicle exhaust system. So I figured we could put the boat in there as the best use of the space along with the trailer. I don't know what else I could do with it.
Other questions? Alderman DeLucia.
Chief, let's start with the easy one. On your capital budget, the Hearst rescue tools, are those new or are we replacing some?
Those tools are 2 new tools. Hearst came out with an e-hydraulic line, so essentially battery operated. They're not replacing our existing pipe system or, you know, hose system. They're going to be an enhancement to that.
Okay, thank you. You took me where I wanted to go. So we're adding to, or I should say, your word, enhancing.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Before I look at the other capital thing, I just wanted to make sure I heard something that you said a little while ago correctly. Did you say that on your fire marshal orders project, right, that it was $170,000 to do the design and the engineering?
No, there was money spent out of the 170,000 to do the design and
Oh,
engineering.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, it was not, it was,
Yeah.
roughly speaking, about $8,000.
Okay, all right. And I know that this was not funded, but it ties into the conversation about the annex expansion. You did make a request for $100,000 in your capital requests, and I'm presuming that that's in addition to the $800,000 that was legislation that's being proposed and been moved on to, hopefully moved on to the bond commission. So what was this 100 grand for?
So the 100,000 that is in my not funded capital request, as we make our request to finance, we do our requests, our long-term goals, and there's multiple years we put in how you would like to fund that project. So this year, I put in there 100,000 to move that project forward. And that would get us money for design, permitting, and stuff of that nature to get the ball rolling. If you look at my request that I submitted to finance, next year and the year after, there are requests in there for additional money to equal out to the 800,000, as is to basically get the ball rolling, fund the project, and then build it. So if we are fortunate to go to the bond commission and get the 800,000, then I would not need the 100,000.
Okay, so I just wanted to understand your intention. So your intention was to really make the project shovel-ready, depending on where the money was going to come from?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Philbrick? Yes.
So now I'm more confused. So if you, and this is to me a perfect example of why if we had the 5-year capital plan, we would know that what was in the pipeline. But, so you're not getting the 100,000, but was your plan or your hope that if you didn't get, or if you don't get the bond money, that you would eventually be coming to the city to ask for that amount of money to facilitate and complete your plan to add 2 additional bays?
I've asked for that money for several years through my capital requests.
So the short answer would be yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Thank you, Chief. Norwich Fire Department? Chief?
Budget starts on page 76. As you're aware, this budget is contained in 2 different segments of this document. The page 76 budget is the general fund segment of the budget prorated out to the entire community. The CCD part of the budget is on page 121, and that includes all personnel except for the chief and the battalion chiefs, and then the support personnel and inspectors that are in this budget. We've tried to endeavor to make it consistent with previous years. This budget does not have any salary increases at this point. We will be negotiating a successor contract. The last year of firefighters' contract is ending June 30th of 2019. So we're in the process of that. So at this point, this does not include any additional funding for raises or any impact on fringe benefits at this time. That completes my overview in the beginning.
Chief, the floor is yours.
No comments. I am concerned with a few things that are in the budget, so hopefully they'll be addressed as we go along. But ready for your questions, please.
Members? Alderman Philbrick,
I'll
please.
start out, is this your budget or is this Chief Scan's budget?
This is a combined effort with the acting chiefs during the process,
All right, thank
not
you.
Chief Scans, but
So
myself.
combination,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Alderman DeLucia.
Good, just to clarify that answer. So this is your collaborative effort with the battalion chiefs who are the acting chiefs after the Chief Scann's retirement. You said that this did not include input from Chief Scan?
It did not.
Members? Alderman Burnham, please.
Hi, thank you for being here. I just have a question about replacement costs. Year to date, we're already at $54,000 spent on replacement costs for this fiscal year. Is this going to be enough? $50,000?
Let's start off referring to a general fund.
Yeah.
The 50K, that is one of the line items that I have an asterisk next to. To answer your question, I don't believe so.
Because that is one of the problems we're running into in general. So, I don't know what else to say.
If you look at what we have currently projected for the year from the comptroller and what we've asked for, 50K is roughly 20,000 under what we requested, and we're already, as you said, year-to-date over that.
Yeah, three
So
quarters through the year, and you're already at $55,000, $54,000 of over.
I would project similar numbers next year.
Okay.
So yes, 50 would be under.
That's it for me, for now.
Other questions? Pro Tem Nash.
I was just trying to look up some other stuff, but I have a quick question on professional development. There was requested $107,000, and there was a $73,000 reduction. Can anyone, that's a big reduction in that, so I was wondering, can someone explain how that came about and if that's going to hurt you or not?
Indeed. Indeed, I will explain it, and indeed it will hurt us. So the reduction there is primarily driven by manpower and salary expenses. So when Lieutenant Mankey put the training budget together, he had calculated man hours for the classes, callback replacement for students at classes, and that drove that up to the $107,000. In speaking with the comptroller and the city manager, the discussion was that man hours should not come out of the training budget, that they should fall under replacement costs, which I'm okay with. Unfortunately, they didn't get moved to replacement costs. So those numbers were reduced there. That number that was left, the remainder of the 33.9, is pretty close to where we were in terms of tuition, training materials, equipment, and instructor fees. So if you take away the salaries that, again, I had mentioned for overtime and replacement costs, that's probably about $9,000 from where we would have liked to have been on those other expenses. That explains the big difference.
The other question I have is I know in the non-funded capital, you did not get the fire marshal vehicle. I know in public safety, we discussed a possible taking one of the trade vehicles from the police department, one of the SUVs, and moving that over to yours. And at the time, you had said that would have been inadequate. Is that still something that's being considered? I mean, maybe a question to the city manager, but I'd like to know because you need the vehicle, you said, so I'd like to see that we get this vehicle, maybe not brand new, but.
Yes, sir, we do need the vehicle. Fleet maintenance has recommended strongly replacing it due to the mileage, frame rot, other issues with it. When the line item was cut for the replacement vehicle, I was hopeful that maybe a small portion would be allowed for a repurposing of a turned-in vehicle, as long as John Raymond said that this is a serviceable vehicle for us. I'm absolutely in line with that. One consideration is the types of vehicles, and the fire marshals, because of what they do, and the other evening in McKinley Avenue is a good example. It would be nice in our efforts for wellness and cancer prevention that we could store their equipment once it's used in the bed of a pickup truck as opposed to the passenger compartment. So we had originally looked at an SUV. Pickup truck is probably more usable based on the fire marshal input, but in the budget constraints, repurposing a turned-in police vehicle is more than adequate.
And Chief, overall, the condition of both your houses, how are they standing up?
Greenville had a recent roof leak. In the process of repairing that leak, I had inquired with Public Works and the roof company the age of the roof that's on there now, and unfortunately, no one can give me an answer. It's a membrane roof. We've had antenna and other devices on top of that building, which we've since moved. So it might be an easier job to replace it. I did get a couple quotes on it. They're not in this budget. This is a recent occurrence. So other than the roof in Greenville, we have some minor issues. The stair tower has a landing and an access issue, which impacts the roof. Because we, in the past, have used our ladder truck to get materials to the roof because they couldn't use the interior stair tower. So for Greenville, I would put the significant issues on the roof and the stair tower. If I were to ballpark based on the quotes we have, I would say combined that's probably under 50,000. So those, I don't know if that's a big number to you guys or not, but that's where that stands. Headquarters, Capitol, we got cut our windows, or a portion of our windows. Last year we were funded a portion of it, and that was to be cumulative for a big project. All replacement windows are about 50,000, I think the rough estimate was. We had 30 of that. We asked for the remaining 20 this year, which was cut. Other than that, at headquarters, it's a 24-year-old building. So we're coming up on some things due. We had an HVAC issue last year. Hopefully the repairs we did last year will hold. We had a solar panel issue last year. Hopefully those will hold. So those things that we can't predict, but overall, the building's in good shape. The crews do an excellent job of maintaining everything and staying on top of stuff. We're pretty proactive in that sense. So I think there are some aesthetic things that we'd like to do. We have 24-year-old carpet in the building, and you've been in the building, you know we take a lot of pride in our building and our spaces.
And my last question would be, I know the chief from Yantic explained that his truck was down. I know you've been asking, I've been sitting up here a long time, and you've been asking for Squad A for a long time, and I see it got cut again. So I'm just asking you, where are you standing with that vehicle right now, and can you hang in there a little longer, or, so what the condition of Squad A is?
We can always hang in there a little longer. That's what we do. The condition hasn't changed. It's only gotten worse. Again, recent issues would be air leaks, generator issues, hydraulic issues with the generator. It's the busiest engine in the city. It is, someone help me, what year is it? 2001, I believe? Thank you. So it's 18 years old for a career department beyond its service life. Again, I will praise fleet maintenance from here to the end of the planet. They do such a great job of maintaining all the apparatus throughout the city. They do a good job, and when John says, you know, this truck needs to be looked at, that's my indicator that it should be a priority.
Thank you, Chief.
But the recent repairs, it's online and going and still plugging.
Other questions, members? Alderman Philbrick?
I had a question. When the chief from Occam was here before, he indicated to us that he has seen approximately a 10% increase in his volume, and he attributed it to, for lack of a better word, a better working relationship. Are you being called? I call it backup, because where I came from, backup was when you backed up your brother and sister departments. Mutual aid was when you called somebody from another town. So have you seen an increase in your volume because Occam is asking you to? I need to see the run cards. I need to see how it's all laid out, literally fixed, so I can see, because I don't understand. So my simple question is, have you found that you have been assisting Occam more recently?
No.
Okay.
But if I may speak on Chief Spaulding's behalf, he wasn't referring to incoming help, he was referring to outgoing help where he's being asked more of.
Okay, thank you.
And because of districts, it would be a big incident if he were going to call the city, just because of the department that's between us.
Thank you.
Other questions of members? Alderman DeLucia.
Alderwoman Burnham mentioned this earlier, so I'll ask you directly. Your turnout gear full sets were, the 12 that you asked for were not funded. Is that going to be a problem in terms of PPE for your folks?
Potentially, yes. We budget every year, and it's usually in there every year, for turnout gear replacement due to lifespan. 10 years is recommended lifespan, wear and tear, damage, and we're pretty good about keeping on top of that. All firefighters have 2 sets of gear. You get a fire like you had the other night at McKinley Avenue. It's saturated with carcinogens and debris and wet. We have an extractor to clean our gear, so we put the second set in service. The second set has to be just as good as the first one in terms of serviceability and protection for the firefighters. We did look at that line item when it was cut, and we looked at what we had remaining this year. So we had asked for 12 sets because basically we just used past years, and we generally replace between new hires, out-of-date gear, and damaged gear about 10 to 12 sets a year. So we had a little bit of a balance, and I had accepted that we weren't going to get 12, but I think we probably need 6, but I could get away with 4, if that answers your question. The gear is as I don't know who said it earlier, it's kind of our lifeline. It's a non-brainer for us. It's our PPE from the heat, the carcinogens, and everything else that we do, whether it's an extrication at a car accident or something else. It's important, critical equipment.
But currently, you're not getting the 4 that you just mentioned. You're not getting any that you asked for.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you. Shall I stay for emergency management?
I'm sorry, could you?
Emergency management? Should I
Sure,
stay up here for
please.
that?
Yeah, we move forward, yes.
That's page 79. I don't have any comments for emergency management.
Members of council, questions? Alderman DeLucia.
Seeing as we still have the fire chief in front of us, I wondered if I could just ask one question that just occurred to me about the PPE.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So, Chief, there's a lot of requests in here from all of the departments regarding the cleaning of gear, right? The equipment to clean the gear. In a nutshell, what is your assessment of our ability to keep the firefighters' gear clean? Citywide, I'm saying.
I don't know the assets of the volunteer departments in terms of extractors. I know a few of them have them, and I did see that a few were cut on the capital non-funded. So I wouldn't be able to answer that citywide. I know for us, we do annual maintenance on everything, and our extractor's in good condition, and it's always available.
So in your opinion, should public safety and the council be thinking toward a centralized facility and equipment to be able to do this citywide? Or are we best served to have the individual extractors in the individual firehouses? Well, help point us in a direction, because that would be a huge capital thing for us to think about.
My opinion would be somewhere in between. I think one centralized wouldn't be adequate, but 6 is probably too much.
Thank you.
Other concerns? Alderwoman Gould?
Well, I'm just going to ask a follow-up on that. But the machines that we have available that are available within the city could be utilized. So if Acom needed to wash 8 sets of gear, he could utilize everyone else's machines.
Again, I can't speak for the others. I know we've washed other gear as well as police department equipment in the past, and I'm sure they would open up theirs to others.
So if everybody didn't have one, we certainly could share that resource around the city. That's my point. Now, I'm not saying that you would certainly, I'm sure, allow Occam to come up and use your machine, or allow Yantic to come up and use your machine, and if you needed gear washed somewhere else within the city, and I'm sure that we could, other departments would facilitate that.
I would like to think so.
Thank you.
No other questions?
Actually, we're still, only because we neglected to ask, did the city managers, to use your question, all right, does the city manager's budget fit your needs?
I think the majority of the items we all can always work within: equipment, maintenance, furnishings, things like that. You know, we'll make do with what we have. I do have strong concerns over the replacement and the overtime costs, because you have contractual obligations, you have unknowns, military leave, injury leave, things like that, and those numbers are a concern to me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief Daley?
Police Department is on page 72. The Police Department budget has a increase in uniform officers. As you recall, last year, we phased in officers over the last, actually 2 years, half funded last year, previous year, half funded. So you see on page 72, the uniform officers of 88 versus 85 and a half, which was the projected and previous year. So obviously now they're fully phased in and they're at 88. So that's the big change that's now reflected in the table of organization. We are, the COPS funding program is phasing out, so we no longer have the, I think we have maybe one year left, Chief? This is the last year of funding for that program. It looks like it's not being renewed. Excuse me. So we have no reimbursement beyond this year in the program. Those are the major highlights. I'll defer to the chief for any other comments.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank this council and previous councils for the support you've given to the police department. With the support you've given us over the last couple of years, we've been able to do really good things in Norwich and make Norwich a safer, much safer place to live and work. And it was the effort of the council and the city manager would be behind the 8 ball, as many communities are faced with increases in crime that we do directly correlated to reductions in staffing. So I want to thank you all for your support, and I'll answer any questions you have.
Members? Alderwoman Gould.
Chief Daley, thank you for being here tonight. What's the crime rate in Norwich?
Crime rate now is down. We've seen over the last 5 years a 48% reduction in
Say
crime.
that, give me that number again?
It's a 48% reduction.
4.8.
4.8 reduction over the last 5 years. Historic reduction. Crime nationwide is down, but crime at this level is unprecedented. I wish I could take credit for it, but the main cause is the support the council's given, and it's boots on the ground, having officers out there. Community policing program's been a big part of it. People feel more safe being in the community. They're out more, they're involved more, and the criminal element doesn't feel safe roaming around when they see a strong police presence.
Okay, and, I didn't ask Chief Montoya this, only because I had a really long conversation with him on the phone today, and I can't keep, bothering him with all my questions. But I'll ask you, because I asked everybody else. And so don't take it personal, I didn't ask the question, but we had this conversation already. The city manager's proposed budget, is that adequate for your department?
Echoing what I think Alderman DeLucia asked Chief Montoya, I'd like to see a little bit more in replacement and overtime, but we understand the fiscal constraints of the city. I don't know what is going to happen. Our overtime budget usually goes to crimes involving detective call-ins and major investigations. That could change at a moment's notice. You have a very terrible crime or a crime spree that could affect the budget. And the replacement overtime, if we have military deployments, a large number of officer injuries, or one of the things we're dealing with now is officer vacancies. Trying to find suitable candidates can drive up your replacement costs.
Thank you.
Pro Tem Nash.
Chief, I've noticed on the communications line that you were asking for 240, and it was proposed like a $90,000 cut. Is that because of the bond package that passed that was able to absorb that cut, or is that from a different area?
When the budget was submitted, I submitted including the first year payment of the maintenance agreement moving forward. I got clarification from the state and Motorola since then that it will not be required, and we worked with the comptroller to remove that, so we will not have to pay that.
So the 142 is adequate?
Is adequate.
The other question I have is just a couple more. Body armor cut for $8,700. Is that body armor that goes to the individual officers, or that for the TPF squad or
No, it's
the detective?
individual officers, but we've been able to build up, because we've been very active in getting reimbursement. The federal government will reimburse 50%. So we're very up to date on our reimbursement, so we have enough money to get by without.
So this cut won't prevent an officer from
Will not
purchasing?
prevent. I wouldn't allow that to happen. I don't think
That's what I
anybody
mean. No,
in this
okay.
room would allow that to happen.
Condition of the building. We know that you're in need of a building. I've been in there many times. It was small when I was there, so how are you looking there?
The struggles continue as far as space and just the age of the facility. My fear is the generator. The generator is not getting any younger. The roof's not getting any younger. But again, my crystal ball is too cloudy to look forward to see how long those are going to last. But what we've been trying to do lately, and with this council was the first one that really listened, and again, thank you, is sprucing up the place. Chief Montoya talked about taking pride in the building, and I think it instills a great sense of pride into the workforce. When you come into a building that's clean, and the carpeting is nice, and the walls are painted, the locker room is modern and state-of-the-art, it gives the officers a good mindset that they feel appreciated, and they go out and do a little bit better job. So those are some of the things that we've been working on in the building, just trying to spruce it up and Band-Aid it through until we can find a more permanent solution.
And then finally, what's the long-term plan over there? I know with the size, is there any discussion on like an annex building perhaps across the street? I know something like that was talked.
We're looking at some options, off-site with a new facility, or on-site with a building attached, like an addition.
Okay, and then finally, I'd like to say thank you for, every time I go over there, how welcomed I feel, and I really appreciate that. I know I've been gone a long time, but
No,
you
and
guys are like family.
It's an open door policy for any council member, and you all should feel welcome. It is your police department, and you should feel welcome walking in the doors.
Thank you, Pat.
Alderwoman Burnham?
Thank you. I think, to go back to the replacement and the overtime costs, I think you're being very kind, where you said you could use a little bit more. Currently, I guess this is a question for the city manager about how you arrived at these compromise numbers. So currently for overtime, we're already at $377,000 year-to-date for the police. And then replacement costs were at $700,000 year-to-date. So, and the proposed seems to match those numbers where we already are year-to-date. So, just curiosity how you arrived at those numbers as being appropriate.
We're anticipating that we have filled all the vacancies. That's one of the assumptions. That takes time, and we're leading the target with that. So that may be a help to keep the cost down. We did increase it by about 50,000, so we recognize that it was lower this year. There have been injuries, hard to predict on a yearly basis. I would say that the 700,000 historically is probably about 10% lower than the actual projection. But then when we're trying to balance out the needs of the department with other needs, we've come up with a compromise number on that. I don't know if Josh wants to say anything further on that.
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. It's, just balancing all the department's needs and, taxes.
Fair. And just for this budget year, like those overages, where will those be made up within the budget?
At year end, we have to make transfers to cover that.
From different line items?
We try to do that first, but if not, then
It's a lot.
from contingency or even fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
Some of the things we've been trying internally, we've been slowing down our spending a little bit, trying to give, because we realize we're over in those two accounts. So we've cut back on some of the training expenses this year, and we've also cut back on, filling things in and sending people to different schools. Anything we can do to save a little bit to offset that, because we realize that it's going to be open. We've delayed hiring, even after we had the delayed hiring, but a records clerk and a deputy chief pushed those back a little bit to trying to offset some of those costs, to try to not spread the burden to the rest of the city, try to keep it within our budget.
Great, thanks. And one more question. What is, in the capital budget, because I'm not on public safety, what is less lethal?
Less lethal, it's the politically correct term for beanbag and, non-lethal shotguns.
Okay.
They like to say less lethal. When they first came out, they were non-lethal. If you have a subject, an emotionally disturbed person armed with a knife, and they're out of taser distance, currently would deploy a 12-gauge beanbag shotgun. Studies across the country have shown that the beanbag projectile is too small to achieve a knockdown. So the trend now is going up to a 40 millimeter, probably about this size, bigger, softer object, but with more force to take the person right off their feet, but not have a lethal effect.
Great, thank you.
Members, Alderwoman Filbert?
Yes, in your capital budget, you talk about, or you request a canine for 8,000. Is the 8,000 for the actual dog?
Yes.
So that covers his or her care and,
It's the purchase of the dog. We buy our dogs from, we're allowed to buy the dogs from a certain dog vendor who is very, very selective. The department has to have a certain reputation to be allowed to purchase a dog from him. If you purchase a dog from this subject, the dog is guaranteed to pass. And if the dog does not pass the class, he will again give you another dog. The dogs he gets are directly from Germany. The dog we just got, that Officer Wright, that Nutmeg was kind enough to donate the money for, was purchased through this gentleman.
so how many canines do you currently have in your department?
We have 2 patrol dogs and 1 narcotic dog. Carlton, the favorite of the meetings, is a narcotic dog, and then there's 2 patrol dogs, Ozzy and Chemo.
What's the other, Ozzy and who else?
Chemo,
Chemo? Oh.
K-I-M-O. He's reaching the end of his life, not end of his...
Oh,
end of his
career.
Career.
Now we're killing dogs.
No,
That'll
no.
be the headline tomorrow.
His service career with us.
Chief
And,
Daly kills off.
No, please send all your emails to...
The headlines now.
You have allocated, then what do you need? What do you need?
Yeah, he's getting close to retirement age, and, every year they have to recertify, and so the handlers get a report card, so we know that he's getting to the end of his career. So, within next year's budget, we will be replacing him, and we want to be proactive as possible, because the budget reductions that have happened at the state level, where they used to run 2 or 3 dog classes a year, now they run 1, maybe 2. So you really have to get on the list early, and one of the things the state judges on your commitment, whether or not you get approved into the class, whether or not you have money to get a dog or even have a dog. Like Carlton's class hasn't started yet, but to get a seat, we had to actually have them in place to prove that we were dedicated to it.
So when your canines retired, do the officers, their handlers, have the ability to take them home as pets?
Yes, they all become pets. We've
Okay.
never had a canine handler not take the dog, and they become pets, the family pets. Luther, Sergeant Marsh's dog, now is enjoying life with his 2 new twin daughters who were born last week. And yes, so it's Luther, Sergeant Marsh, and 4 daughters. So he will be quite busy, but they become pets and they become integrated right into the family.
But then they also become the financial responsibility of the
Yes,
of
we
the
transfer
owner. The city
ownership
doesn't,
and
yeah.
the vet and all that. There's no
no
postal,
pension for the
no OPEB costs involved with the dogs.
For those retirees.
Alderman DeLucia.
Chief, would you just repeat for the benefit of the entire council what you told me last night when I asked you about the new cruisers?
Yes, the new cruisers, there's 5 funded currently. We'd like to see that number increase to 6. Captain Vega, for those who are familiar with him, the Public Safety Committee is, he is relentless with tracking mileage and trying to keep the fleet under 100,000 miles. When the cars go over 100,000 miles, we lose the warranty. It's bumper to bumper. And it's not that we don't have the talent at the garage to fix jobs. It's just the way the cars are built. The water pump is like a 16-hour job. We don't have man hours at the garage. Right now, if a water pump goes, the car goes to Simon Ford, and it gets Gerard Ford, and it gets repaired at 0 cost to the city other than downtime. So trying to keep that going. John Raymond started that. I think it's a worthy goal to have the fleet under 100,000. You've already heard where there's potential uses for other cars in the city, going to other departments that could get many more years of service and still be under the 100,000 if we replace on a scheduled basis, not a need basis or listen, the car's falling apart basis. Alderman DeLucia, Nash, remember how it was? It still was on when I got here. There was nights we didn't have enough cars to go out, and we had a cruiser driver walking. We're past that, but I think now we have an opportunity to continue to keep the city's expenses down, have a safe fleet, and then open up opportunities for other city departments to reap the benefits of our vehicles.
Thank you.
Alderman Philbrick.
Are there any provisions in your budget for the MRAP?
No.
Okay.
No, the MRAP, any MRAP-related costs that we anticipate, right now, we're looking to use the asset forfeiture funding stream for. And that's not to say that could change down the road, but I couldn't see any large-scale things that would rise to the non-reoccurring or capital level.
Alderman Browning.
So we've previously had an hour-long discussion about this, just so that people in the audience know this. So you plan to train about 20 officers, 10 hours per, in how to drive an MRAP, and that's not coming out of your training budget, that's coming out of the asset budget?
The cost for the class, the trainers will be coming from the asset forfeiture budget, and we're going to see what we can do creatively. Some of it may come from the training budget, but not a huge amount. We may do a mixture of compensatory time for the officers. We're trying to find a way to minimize the impact.
And you have about how much in your asset forfeiture budget?
Between the 2 accounts, I'd guess 50,000. We just we used some of the federal the state asset forfeiture last week for the department's contribution to the body camera program, so 16,000.
Yeah, and it's a 10-hour course. You told me that they'd be practice driving up in an empty Dodge Stadium parking lot. I know the Army, we previously discussed that they prefer a 40-hour training course. You're confident that the 10 hours will produce a safe driver?
That's what they're training all the law enforcement, there's approximately 2,000 of these vehicles out in the public, and that's the class that's recommended for the operators.
Okay. Moving on to another subject, we're getting an additional computer repair person. I know
Yes.
I know there's another term like land operator.
IT tech.
Yeah. Will that be enough in the long term?
Again, my crystal ball remains cloudy, but right now, something's better than nothing. And just speaking from the police department and, you know, what I know from the public safety of the fire departments, yes, that person would be incredibly busy.
Yeah.
We're 24-hour operations, 7 days a week. I was talking to Leon today. He got an email for 2 o'clock this morning from an officer who's having difficulties with one of his MDTs. So it's a 24/7 job. Not that we expect the person to be there, but if we can get our programs and functions back online within 24 hours, I think it'd be very beneficial.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is because your department is about over 1/3 of the people we have on the city side. That's just an observation. It's not an editorial statement. So I'm wondering how we even do this business with just 3 people on the city side.
It's difficult, but if there's 3 people and we're a third of the department, well, for that math works for us. I hate to sound selfish, but that works out. We do have a lot of people. All the officers are generating police reports, and they're all using the computers. They're all hands-on, and these are high exposure, high risk reports. When we arrest somebody, we're taking their freedoms, as you know from your legal experience, and we can't have system failures due to any type of technology issues when we're dealing with people's freedoms and making sure that we get criminal convictions.
Yeah, the next question I have is because it's something which would have dramatic impacts on your budget and our budget. Is your department proposing this fiscal year to do a proposal to Preston to provide police services?
We have not been contacted yet. If we were contacted, I'd talk with the city manager, who I'm assuming would talk it over with the city council, whether or not it's something you would like to do. I think that given our size, it's something we can do. The proposal we did a couple of years ago was when our staffing was a little higher, and we could have pulled some spare people and done it a little cheaply. And now I think we'd actually have to start, hiring people to do that.
Yeah, my concern is based on a newspaper report, which was based on the reporter watching the PowerPoint. Ledyard said, well, we're going to have to hire 5 additional officers to do this. And I'd be concerned about increasing the size of the Norwich Police Department any further from 88 officers and support staff on up. And that's not a knock, it's just that, police services are very expensive.
No, it is very expensive, and I think we saw the Ledyard proposal. I don't want to comment on the specifics of it, but I think we would be greatly under the Ledyard proposal because just our size that we already exist, and the proximity to Preston and our access points.
Pro Tem
I
Knight.
just have one last, I should have asked when I asked before. The deputy, as my city manager, deputy chief's situation, are we advertising for that? Are we discussing hiring for that? Where are we at with that? Because I know, and it's in a pretty crucial position in our department, especially with, internals and stuff like that.
Yes, we're in the final process. We just recently, I think last week, we completed Friday. We completed the job description. Every time there's a vacancy, we take a look at the job description. So we've updated that, and we're ready to move forward now.
Awesome, thank you.
Alderman Browning.
More of a comment than a question, but certainly if a offer was made to Preston, and this is my own personal opinion, I think that what Ledger did, which was very smart, is they basically told them you're paying for your vehicle, so that doesn't get transferred to our capital fund costs. And the other thing too is, if we were to actually go there, I would not want to see us in a position where we felt we had to underbid another municipality to provide a price break. Because unfortunately, the smaller towns here, because they were working under a system where the state police were subsidized for so many years, they expect a very favorable price. And I'm not sure, given our high taxes in the city, we could really afford to do another city a favor, and that's just editorializing, but, you know, I don't want to be in a situation where a contract comes back and Browning has a problem, and you're like, where did this come from?
No, I share your concerns. I think where the savings we have is just, we're seeing Ledger have to expand their support staff. I think a lot of those costs, we wouldn't be affected by because of our size.
I do want to make it clear that any overtures towards regionalization, our costs would be covered plus an overhead subsidy. So our intention, if we were to do this, would be to cover 100% of our costs plus. And if we can't do that, then we would not go forward.
Other questions? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you for your time.
That does conclude tonight. Our next budget session is Thursday, April 4th at 6 p.m.